I was listening really closely to that, Jeremy. You read, if somebody slaps you, stand there and take it. It's no wonder they killed him. The contemporary reading is an excerpt, a passage taken out of Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. Some of you may know that name. Isabel Wilkerson also wrote a powerful book called The Warmth of Other Suns, which chronicled the great migration of blacks from the South post-World War II through the 60s. Her book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, is equally compelling, and it chronicles the history of a hardwired system, a pre-existing condition in our own country based on race and color. Here's what she writes. America is an old house. We can never declare the work over. When you live in an old house, you may not want to go into the basement after a storm to see what the rains have wrought. The owner of an old house knows that whatever you are ignoring will never go away. Ignorance is no protection from the consequences of inaction. It will be there waiting for you until you finally gather the courage to face it. Not one of us was here when this house was built, but here we are, the owners of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls. We are the heirs to whatever is wrong. We did not install the frayed wiring and the corroded pipes, but they are ours to deal with now. But any further deterioration is on us. This is a very old house that we have inherited. It is not the responsibility of those who have been targeted by this caste system to fix it. We are in this old house together. I commend to your reading the book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. I know a few things about old houses. Since 1983, I've rehabbed 10 of them. And if I knew you better, I'd show you some scars. A dozen years ago, when Jody and I purchased a house in Grand Rapids, and today it's 125 years old, that house was on the market for a long time. Nobody was standing in line to buy it. Nobody was elbowing any other possible buyer. We were the only ones, so we bought it. We kind of felt sorry for it. It was sort of like the last kid picked on the baseball team. Somebody's got to take him, right? The image on the cover of your program this morning is actually a picture of our old house 10 years ago. It looks a little better today, I'm proud to say. And not once did we have to go through marriage counseling to improve it. Over the years, I've come up with 27 unforgettable life lessons regarding old houses. Fortunately for you, I've reduced them to 4. All right? You can hang in there for 4. Lesson number 1. When you work on an old house, this is the most important lesson. When you work on an old house, you're bound to get hurt. You're bound to get hurt. You can wear work gloves, but a hammer can still smash your thumb. You can bend down to grab something out of the toolbox and tear cartilage in your knee. You can do 237 things without incident, and it's the 238th that sends you to the medicine cabinet or maybe to the emergency room. When you work on an old house, you're bound to get hurt. And being in relationship with people is much the same. You're bound to get hurt. Nobody gets married with the intent of getting hurt. Nobody gets married with the intent of hurting. But relationships are not immune from emotional hammer blows and painful shocks to the system. So if you're breathing, you're bound to get hurt. Some wounds get better. Some wounds heal. Some leave nasty scars. Some are visible or less so. When I was cutting a piece of linoleum many years back, I was in a hurry, and I had a very sharp blade, and it slipped, and it went right up through my index fingernail, past the first joint, and all the way to the second joint, 2 inches long. $18 stitches. I was going to say 27, but I'll be honest, it was 18 stitches only. Yeah. You know, to be human is to be vulnerable. We all know that. Sometimes you get hurt, maybe it's your fault, maybe it's someone else's fault, maybe it's nobody's fault. There's no immunity, there's no inoculation, there's no guarantee. Maybe time heals all wounds, and maybe it doesn't. And then Jesus comes along. In Luke chapter 6, in Luke 6, it's called the Sermon on the Plain. In Matthew's gospel, it's called the Sermon on the Mount, but it all says the same. He's spouting about an upside-down logic to life. Like, you're blessed when you've lost it all. You're blessed when you're ravenously hungry. You're blessed when you've been cut down to size. You're blessed when your good name has been smeared. That's how it starts in the 6th chapter of Luke. And if that's not enough to rattle your emotional cages, Jesus goes on to say, as Jeremy read, love your enemies. Maybe he means that aggressive foreign country way across the ocean that we should love, and maybe we can do that, but does it also mean the 2 clueless neighbors across the street from our house who have a total of 8 parking tickets on their snow-covered cars? I gotta love them too. They're still there. Or maybe for some, it's not across the nation or across the street. Maybe it's just across the church aisle of someone you have difficulty to love. And Jesus isn't done with this ridiculousness. Take a slap on the face without slapping back. No more calculated revenge. No more getting even. No more talking about people behind their back. Give me a break. Who can do that? When you rehab an old house, you're going to get hurt. And if your ashes aren't yet in an urn and your body is not 6 feet under, you're going to get hurt. And it seems to me what Jesus is suggesting, how we respond to others, is the very meaning of life together. Lesson number 2. When it comes to rehabbing an old house, real progress begins, and it can only begin when you rent a dumpster. You gotta rent a dumpster. A 10 cubic yarder is probably not enough. 20 cubic yarder, you're getting there, but if you really want to do it right, you get a 30 cubic yard dumpster. You need a dumpster to throw out all the stuff that doesn't work. It's no longer useful, like old sinks and moldy toilets and grimy kitchen cabinets and smelly carpet and 5 layers of wallpaper that predates World War I. You got to get serious. You got to throw stuff out. You got to rent a dumpster. Progress, for sure, doesn't end with a dumpster, but progress can't begin without one. That's because house cleaning, like church cleansing, is beneficial for the soul. It's good for the mind. Every church from time to time needs to rent a dumpster. Dumpsters are receptacles for mindsets and worn out attitudes, like so many churches. We've never done it like that before. That's dumpster material. That's not how we do things around here. Dumpster. We've got a reputation to uphold, and I'm amazed at how many churches have a lousy reputation and they still want to hold it. Dumpster, please. We're not comfortable trying that. Dumpster. Don't make us change. Dumpster. I don't know, maybe sometimes pastors need to be thrown in the dumpster. Dumpsters cleanse the soul and the agendas that aren't worth keeping around individually, collectively. We need to deal with the past without clinging to it. And some stuff we just have to throw in a dumpster. The relationship failed. So you move on and you throw it in a dumpster. That's healthy. You made a huge mistake, hoping never to make it again. Throw it in the dumpster. You gave it your best shot. You tried your best. It didn't work out. Throw it in the dumpster and try again. You trusted someone who betrayed your trust. Turn the page. Start writing a new story. Throw the old in a dumpster. Failing never makes a person a failure. Dumpsters are invaluable for persons and institutions hoping to move forward. Lesson number 3. Regarding old houses, I'm curious, how many of you live in an old house? I mean old house pre-1940. Okay. I'm talking to some people here. That's good. Regarding old houses, you have to be aware of what I call the nasty trinity. And the nasty trinity, quite forthrightly, is asbestos in the basement, lead paint on the woodwork, and old electrical wiring in the walls, the nasty trinity. Ignore the nasty trinity at your own peril if you live in an old house. Now, over the course of some 30 years, I created a nasty trinity list for churches, and I've no compromise. That's one nasty element on the Trinity list. 2, people whose first response to a new idea or a proposed plan, maybe a fresh vision, is to rattle off all the reasons why it won't work. Nasty Trinity list number 2. The negative expression always is the first one to come up. And 3, it's people who undermine the process by engaging in clandestine conversations with the intent of stirring up others. That's maybe the most dangerous. Nasty Trinity list. My way or the highway, it won't work. I'm going to stir up trouble. Some people are discussion killers in life, idea murderers, emotional arsonists who intentionally or without self-awareness sabotage relationships throughout their life. So beware when any of those nasty Trinity elements rise up in your life. Lesson number 4. Lesson number 4, I can state very simply as the enduring value of woodlath. The enduring value of woodlath. If you live in a house prior to 1940, more than likely you have interior walls that were created by mixing a wet solution of plaster with horsehair, and then the craftsperson with a trowel spread it on thin horizontal slats of wood covering the 2x4 studs. Some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. Huh. I feel like Mr. Rogers. This is what I'm talking about. These are true 2x4 studs, 16 inches apart on the center. And the horizontal boards are called woodlath. They're separated between each other by maybe 1/4 of an inch. I've seen them closer connected. And I said, what a craftsman does is he takes that trowel and presses the plaster in a firm grip and a steady, smooth application, so that the plaster then drips on the back of the woodlath. On the back of the woodlath with a permanent bond so that a wall can last for centuries. Centuries. Everything that woodlath does is behind the scenes. There's generally no public display of wood. I'm just itching to put a little hole in one of these walls to show you. I'm sure there's woodlath behind those. You never see woodlath doing its thing. In healthy communities, I'm convinced, civil, educational, for-profit, non-for-profit, know the value of woodlath people. Woodlath people are not fist pounders and finger pointers and screamers who become, as Woodlath people, the heart and soul and the backbone of institutions. Woodlath people. Every church, every organization, every business, for-profit, non-for-profit, needs and relies primarily on Woodlath people. That's why God created Woodlath. People who, without fanfare, without fuss, without thumping their chests, without calling attention to themselves, quietly, generously, graciously, lovingly hold things together. Woodlath people seldom make any demands. Woodlath people don't toot their own horns. Woodlath people never threaten to leave if they don't get their way. Woodlath people are holy saints whose presence sort of infects the rest of us. You have an abundance of Woodlath people. An abundance of Woodlath people. That's your strength. That's your resiliency. That's your love. That's your caring. That's your compassion. That's your commitment. You are visionary repairers of a broken world. In Hebrew, it's called tikkun olam, repairers of the world. You are repairers of the world. And our threatened planet, our fractured world, our troubled nation, our increasingly punitive country, even in this idyllic town on the Kalamazoo River, is in want of this congregation's Woodlath quality and stamina and holding power, even if it's behind the scenes. Because you are grounded and you are thoughtful and you are open and you are committed to justice and fairness and inclusion and activism and radical welcome. Thanks for listening to my dumpster story. And just this last thing, if you live in an old house, some of you raised your hand, and you're looking for someone to do a little repair for you, don't call me. Don't call me. Thanks for listening.